Okay, so we're at the DCA 10 by 10 event, and I'm talking to Jake Green from Scolmore. And the first question for you is, does the industry, is it able to carry on self-regulating, do you think, for all the pressures it's under, or is it time for the government, whether it's our government or EU, I know we're not in, but do we need some kind of legislation to start making them move faster to sustainability?
Well, everybody needs to move faster to sustainability. That's a given. Do we need some sort of government intervention, or do we need some sort of governing body to house it all and say, right, this, when you build a new data centres, then this is the way that you need to operate? Absolutely, yeah. I think there's something that needs to be sped up purely because of the scale and the way that we're operating. It's not slowing down. We can see the growth over the next 5 years. That's just going to continue to keep growing on and on and on. So yeah, definitely needs somebody to come in and say, this is the way we've got to be doing things. You need to be making sure that it's sustainable from the outset, not just tinkering around and just sort of looking at it and going, right, let's do a little bit and then we've done our bit. I think when you start to look at the bigger picture, everybody seems to say, right, I'm going to tick a box. But actually, if the government or whoever it may be that comes in and self-regulates it, or regulates it, should I say, they need to do it from the outset and say, this is the way that you need to now operate, purely because people were saying, I'm just going to do a little bit and then that way I've ticked the box.
Okay, and in terms of the industry shortage, skills shortage, I mean, whether it's running a data center or the supply industry, there seems to be a lack of people, and the general view is that it's an aging population, shall we say, of data center professionals. So, any ideas how we can address that problem?
There's lots of ideas. From my personal experience, I went through an apprenticeship, not necessarily in the data center space, but from an electrical point of view. And even on that side, there's skill shortages, and they're struggling to get electricians through the door. How do you entice people, especially in the data center? I think it's a great market. Had there been something when I was doing my apprenticeship, maybe it was a route that I would have took and sort of ventured into. Trying to entice people into that area is pretty hard when there's not an official qualification. I think when you sit back and you go, right, where's my credibility coming from? If you've got no qualifications against you, are you ever going to be seen as, or are you always going to be seen just as like a labourer to a certain extent, without any sort of paperwork to back you up? Everybody, or even when I was young, everyone used to say, well, when you do your qualifications or when you do your GCSEs, you need to make sure that you get the grades. And then you go into college, make sure you finish your apprenticeship and get your papers, because if you don't get your papers, then you're never going to be known as an electrician. So there absolutely needs to be a formal qualification for the data centres. How you get people into that, I mean, it's a tricky one, purely because of the scale of money that people operate on. People don't want apprentices touching things. You look at the way that the electrical market's going as well. I see so many people say they want adult learners because they're more mature. So I think they've got a real problem on their hands trying to entice new people into that market. But the formal qualification route would certainly help to set that up. And also you got to think you're going to need the colleges, or whether it's college or universities, to sort of buy into that as well, because as we've already seen, there's shortages in staff in the actual industry, let alone people to train them as well. And again, you see that right across the electrical industry as well.
Okay, and I think the main session is about to start, so just very quickly, the data center industry has maybe a bit of an image problem, often compared to the travel industry, the airline industry. Do you think it needs to explain itself a little bit better?
I think, yeah, it needs to be a little bit more transparent, for sure. We just spoke very briefly there about the skill shortages. It's known as a secretive camp, really. Not a lot of people know about it. You couldn't walk down the road and say that's a data center. It's all hidden behind closed doors, factories that are hidden in obscure locations. So yeah, it does, and I think we spoke about the skill shortage. How are you going to entice people into it if you can't ever let people know what's going on behind closed doors? So yes, it's definitely got to explain itself.